when they sing that goodbye song and the thank you song, when you're thanking the Creator for this person's life and for giving this person to us for this amount of time, and you really feel that emotion in there, and it just really connects with your heart and your spirit.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonen, faith columnist and features writer for The Forum, author, and speaker. In this episode, I ask Rich Peterson, what is faith like on Fort Peck? So first of all, what is Fort Peck? If I could say it most simply, it's the place of my grounding and where my deepest, richest memories are held. But more broadly, it's a reservation in northeast Montana, just over the border from North Dakota, where my family landed in the early 1970s. Home to several federally recognized bands of Native American peoples, Assiniboine, Lakota, and Dakota. Dad and Mom were teachers working in Wyoming when I was born, but looking to move closer to their home state of North Dakota and found work in Poplar, headquarters of the Fort Peck Reservation. I lived there until my high school graduation in 1986. One of my elder peers, Rich Peterson, is the oldest child in his family. He's Dakota Sioux, an enrolled member of the Fort Peck Assiniboine and Sioux tribes. Rich graduated in 1981, 5 years before I did, but our families both attended Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church and crossed paths often in our small city. I reconnected with Rich after discovering we'd both chased the same pathway of journalism. Rich has worked in both television and radio, including for Aboriginal Voices Radio Network. Currently, he's the media project coordinator for the Fort Peck Language and Culture Development. In today's episode, I explore his fascinating work, telling the stories of the people of the reservation as well as his efforts to help preserve its history, along with delving into the topic of religion. What was it like to grow up in two soul worlds, as it were, the world of Christianity and the world of Native spirituality? What are their differences and what are their similarities? Can the two coexist within a person? Native spirituality is a fascinating topic in and of itself, sprinkled with ghost stories and renditions of a clown-like spirit known as Heyoka, and a spooky part man, part hoofed devil figure who would show up in various locations uninvited. Intrigued? I thought so. Well then, let's get going. Rich, thank you so much for joining me are you in Poplar right now?
Yes.
Okay. So, we saw each other about a year ago. My mom and I were in Poplar. We'd taken a little road trip to a funeral of a dear friend of mine who I had the privilege of spending the last week, couple weeks before she died. She was in Great Falls, Montana, and I had about a week or so with her, and it was just I feel like looking back, she had her rally when I was there, and I just feel so grateful. She was so lively, even though it was just weeks from her death. And anyway, that is where we crossed paths, and it was so fun to see you. And I think my mom, Jane Beauclair, Mrs. Beauclair, had you teach her a lot of years ago. Do you have any memories of those days with my mom as a teacher?
In my elementary years, hers is the class I remember most. And it was just, I learned a lot. And that's where I learned to really enjoy reading, in her classes. And she was would take us like outside of the classroom. I remember when she took our class to a field trip. It was an evening field trip, so we went to see Willy Wonka when it first came out, and that was like in the early '70s, and I was in third grade, and that was just a blast. And Willy Wonka to this day is my favorite movie. So.
That is so awesome. Yeah, those early years leave such an impression on us. And, it's funny because my mom was kind of known as a disciplinarian. And so people would say, is your mom mean like that at home? And she's not at all. Like, she's the sweetest mom ever. But, you have to kind of keep your class in order. And I guess she figured that out.
She was, but I never really noticed. I never even thought about that. I just really enjoyed her class, and so I always got along well with her. I was always an inquisitive type. Like to visit adults, and so I always enjoyed my teachers. So.
That's so cool too that you said that reading because you're a journalist. I mean, you became a communicator, and so that's pretty neat. And reading was a passion of hers, and even in her later years when she was doing tutoring, and just more recent, she was in the Reading Corps program, helping people learn to read, because when she was young, she had really bad eyesight and reading was really was a big challenge for her. And so when she finally got her glasses and was able to read, and it just became a passion of hers. So I love that you said that about my mom. So she likes my podcast, so I'm sure she'll be listening. But anyway, yeah. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Sheila, because by the time this drops, it's going to be really close to when we were together a year ago. And I just, the year is always hard, and that year anniversary.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something that it's like we feel all of that grief, and but at the same time, there's a beautiful community that surrounds, and I do want to talk about that, because that is one of the things I took away from the reservation. There's such a beautiful encircling in times of need, and so I want to share about that. But before I go there, I want to hear a little bit more about you. So. We knew your family growing up. My dad, I considered your dad. He had a lot of respect for your dad. And
they had coffee. They would meet. There was this group of guys that would meet for coffee every morning.
Yes. At the Tasty Freeze or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. And they would look outside and go, what the hell? They see things on the highway, and
right on Highway 2. So there's a lot of things going.
That was the main topic of their discussion.
Yes. Yeah. So and I can see your parents now, and also I was in basketball with one of your sisters, and one of your brother is in my sister's class. I don't know. We just crossed paths a lot, and then we did go to Our Lady of Lourdes, but but before we go into the depth here, I want to hear about you. Tell me a little bit take me through your experience in journalism. I know you worked for the Great Falls paper, and how did that all go, and how did you decide on that too?
Well, when I first went to college, I graduated from Poplar in 1981, and I was always interested in doing something with writing. And between high school and before I went to college, I worked at the tribal newspaper, and I really enjoyed it. She had me cover sports. She kind of sent me out to experiment, see how I would do. And I went to college, and I majored in journalism, and I went into broadcast journalism because I like writing and producing. Anyway, but when I was a sophomore, junior, my advisor told me I would never make it in broadcast journalism. So he said, you might as well try another career, So anyway, I went along with it. I was at University of Montana at the time. And,
okay.
About my third year, I just wasn't feeling it there after he said that. And so I transferred to Montana State University in Billings, which was then known as Eastern. And I majored in marketing, communications, and, public relations. I had planned on going into that field. And my advisor told me, she said, you need to, why don't you do an internship at the newspaper or TV station, and because you're going to be working with those people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took an internship at KULR TV, Channel 8, and it led to a part-time job. And then when I graduated from college, they offered me a full-time job. So I was morning anchor, and then reporter the rest of the day. And then after I worked there for about 4 or 5 years, and then I came back and I got a job with the college here working with their distance learning program. And then from there, I went to grad school for a year, and then the Great Falls Tribune offered me this job. It was the Gannett Company that owned the Tribune. And so I worked there for 5 years, and then I was transferred to USA Today in Washington, D.C., and where I covered a lot of health, education, and entertainment. That was really interesting. And I got to cover hearings on Capitol Hill.
Wow, that would have been a great experience. I just have a pause here because we have another commonality, because I started in broadcast journalism too, and I did a TV internship, and at the end of it, I was told, you're not and I'm like, really? So I feel like I'm kind of coming back to my roots here, but I feel like, I think the thing was my voice didn't have a low enough resonance or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, so I too, I had that same discouragement and kind of was
Yeah.
veered into print right towards the
Yeah.
end. So it's interesting. We both had
Yeah.
that. Okay. So we go
Yeah.
on a different
I
path,
was
but
told
wow.
I have a baby face and it'll never leave me.
Oh, well, whatever. Here we
Yeah,
are,
whatever.
right? I mean, we found other paths, so that is
Yeah, I was
fine.
just shocked at how critical they were and how open they were about it. And so,
Yeah. And
uh,
I think things have changed. Like I think
yeah,
back then there was kind of a narrow view of who was on
yeah,
TV or whatever, but I think that
yeah,
really that's changed quite a bit.
yeah,
So, but USA Today, wow, that's pretty impressive and would have been a interesting experience being in Washington D.C. too. So,
yeah,
what were some of your like standout moments of that time? You said the entertainment part was interesting. Was there is
yeah,
there a story there?
yeah. I covered some movie premieres. There was the movie with Harrison Ford, and I got to meet some of those guys, and I had to do a story about that. And then I interviewed, oh gosh, at the time, Winona Ryder when she was really big back then, and
Wow.
just different celebrities. Remember Joan Rivers,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary Tyler Moore, uh,
Wow.
just a lot of celebrities. I can't remember offhand. And occasionally I find my stories, um, and I got to meet a lot of people through USA Today because we got to sit in on editorial meetings um,
Right.
and I got to meet like Jesse Jackson and even Martha Stewart, which so
Wow.
I had my cookbook in hand, and so but yeah, just it was so interesting there, and just seeing that, and then seeing the political world how it really operates. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it was just behind the scenes stuff and all the
Yeah,
gossip.
I'm sure you look at like the presidential debates and all the things happening. You have a little bit of a different perspective since
Yeah,
you kind of were there on the scene during those times, and it's not always what is seen and what is really happening might
yeah,
not be the same thing.
and I learned it's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's the Senate versus the House.
Ah,
So that's
yeah,
where the
yeah.
really power struggle is, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And um, but I enjoyed politics. I like movies that are about the inside of politics. And then after USA Today, I went to work for Aboriginal Voices in Toronto. It's a magazine that covers Native entertainment.
Okay.
And I worked there for a few years in Toronto. Then I took a job with the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian magazine.
Okay.
And,
Oh, that was my dad's favorite magazine. We had the
yeah,
Smithsonian.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that job because I love history.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally I'd get to go to the warehouse and look through old some of the things that were from Fort Peck. Some of the items that were here were taken, forcefully taken, or they were donated. And my grandmother has 2 star quilts at the Smithsonian. So
Beautiful. That's really cool.
yeah, there's supposed to be an exhibit in a few years, and they're going to be shown in that. And so that's where I want to go see that. I mean,
Not to go off track here, but the star quilt, not everyone will know what that is and what
oh
the
yeah,
significance of it. You want to share a little bit about, because
yeah,
that's one of the things I like about being connected on Facebook is you share things from
yeah,
home and I get to share it with other people. Like this is one of the beautiful traditions that
yeah.
I grew up with. Share about the star quilt.
Yeah, the star quilt. Of course, a lot of people have seen pictures of it, but it originally, back before the white man came into this country, you honored people with a buffalo robe, a painted buffalo robe, and the star. It had some stars on it, but the star design came from the shape. It was like a feather shaped, but it was like a long diamond shaped, and.
Okay.
So people were honored each other with buffalo robes or elk hides, with decorated, in colors with natural paints, and then after the boarding school era, when natives were forced to stop hunting buffalo and other animals, the in the boarding schools, the young girls were introduced into quilting, and so they kind of took that design and made the star quilt. It came from that.
Okay.
And so, and that continues on today. It's really had a revival in the past, like 10 years. People were worried about a lot of the quilt makers were dying off, and but there's really been a revival, especially here at Fort Peck, because the college has classes on star quilt making, and they're always full. So,
Wow,
and
that's
then
neat. Yeah.
yeah, and you see a lot of the like Poplar High School, and the other reservation schools too, have the star quilt ceremony where they honors during senior night, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the pictures where you'll see. And so in the place of that buffalo robe, that star quilt now has become an item of honor.
Yeah, I loved, someone had given me one at graduation, and so then I brought that with me to college, and it kind of just kept me close to home. And then
Yeah,
when my mom retired, they gave her a satin star quilt,
yeah,
turquoise, which was her favorite color, and she still has that on her bed. And yeah, it's beautiful. There's so many beautiful, colorful things close to the heart kind of traditions that I
yeah,
just am so grateful for. And even just a love of family.
yeah,
I felt kind of left out because I didn't have like 50 cousins surrounding me.
yeah,
I wanted that. And I think that's why one of the reasons I had a bigger family and was open to life, because of what I was around. Everyone's a cousin. It's just like a big family.
yeah.
So I want to get to some of those traditions, but also talk a little bit about spirituality. So you had kind of a dual introduction in a way. So share a little bit about that. And I'm curious kind of about and I grew up Catholic on the reservation, and a lot of Native people, it was a mission church. So a lot of Native people went to the Catholic Church, including your family. And so, but there's another spirituality too. So I want to hear, there's probably less known about the Native spirituality. So at what point, like what was your spiritual journey like? I'm sure you went through like we all do, in our
Yeah,
adult lives, like kind of assessing. So just share a little bit about that journey.
yeah. Well, of course, we grew up Catholic. My grandmother, she attended she was forced to go to a Catholic boarding school, and
Okay.
and so we kind of continued on. My dad was originally Lutheran, and then he became Catholic,
Okay.
and then he was a very strong Catholic, and so was my mom. Um, and then we always went to mass. I mean, we never missed mass, and you remember all the families there. The McClammys, Thielens,
Hmm.
the Beauclairs. I mean, that's one of the memories I have. And
Yes.
then when I was 18, I went to my first healing ceremony put on by a spiritual leader here, and I went with my mom. She had always gone to those. That really it didn't change my faith, but it like transformed or brought it to like the next level where I was
Hmm.
just it really reaffirmed my belief, and strengthened that, the and I realized more of the power of prayer,
What
and
was it like? What was the healing ceremony like?
yeah, there was a lot of healing songs, um, and this person I went to, um, the first ceremony I went to, her daughter had committed suicide, and the spirit was still around. The little kids were seeing her and hearing her cry at night. The spirit, and
Mm.
the family had asked for help. They didn't know what to do. Nothing seemed to be working, and so during the ceremony, the spirits from the other side were called. Um, Our ancestors were called to help take her back to the other side, because
Mm.
there's a belief, here, with sometimes with suicide, the spirit wanders, and it's a form of hell. In our belief, the when you're trapped on this earth as a spirit, you still feel hunger, you still feel thirst, you still feel cold and heat, and so it's really hard on the spirit, and so people, you got to get them back to the other side, somehow, um, where they're supposed to go. It's just that some people, if they commit suicide, obviously they're lost, and or they may not have been exposed to any type of religion or or spiritual ways.
Hmm.
Um, And so sometimes they're lost in that ceremony. And it was also to help a woman who had cancer too.
Okay.
And stuff in the, she was told what to take of traditional medicines to help her. So, but that was, and then it, then it ended, and everyone, there was a feed afterwards, a little giveaway. But and then I saw what happened, after later, about how these families were helped through that, and it just really, strengthened my belief about the other side.
Right. And 18 is, you're questioning a lot of things.
Yeah,
And
is this for real? So it just really reaffirmed my belief, more so than the church did. So,
right.
But and to this day, I still attend a lot of ceremonies, and that's the sweat lodge, and a lot of my family's involved too, and some are like in a lot of ways too. Like my mother went to the church and to native ceremonies, like a lot of people do. So
right. And I like that. I like that there can be that you don't have to. It's so important to keep with what your family had. We all are part of our ancestors. We didn't just like come into the world and here we are. Like we're all tied. And I love that the Native feeling a sense of connectedness to ancestry. And it sounds like you've been able to, I don't know, the work in Toronto, that sounds really interesting. I skipped over what you're doing now. What is it you're doing now in Poplar? You're
right
working
now,
for the tribe?
Yeah, I work for the Fort Peck Tribe's language and culture department. I'm their media guy, where I do a lot of the recordings and press releases, things like that for the tribe. And I also teach cultural foods classes. I learned a lot from my mom, my grandma, and some other elders, how to prepare like corn balls, pemmican, certain teas, medicinal teas, and I do a lot of that for work too. And I really enjoy that. That aspect I really enjoy. It just brought me to a new. It's like, wow, this feels like I should have been here a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, you found it, and that's beautiful. Maybe we could talk about Sheila's funeral because, there's just something so beautiful, and I wanted to travel. Even though I'd already just been to Great Falls, I wanted to come back and be with her family. And then, I hadn't been to a Native funeral for a while, but share a little bit about that, the wake and all of the things that go into it. There, food is placed by the body, and just different things. And there's still a lot I don't know. So you know more than I do. So just kind of share, if you would, what it's like when someone from the community there dies.
Yeah, well, just for a lot of people, in our tribe, we believe that the spirit is around for about 4 days after they die, before they move on, and you travel to heaven or through the Milky Way. That's the path to the other side. So that's why you saw them feeding when they put the plate of food by her coffin. They're feeding the spirit. So for her, in preparation for her journey on away from this earth. So.
What I like about that is we are, even in the Catholic belief, we're not just spiritual beings. We're earthly and spiritual. And so to me, like, that just brings together the incarnation as far as, God becoming man, being with us. And then you see the food. It's like, that this nourished their body in life. And it's not like there's a transition. It isn't just like, and I think, maybe it's for us as humans too, like we need to touch, we need to feel and witness. And that's why I guess I know this happens sometimes, but like if someone's cremated, like, I don't know, there's something important to me. I'm just that kind of person that I need to touch and see and feel. And it's a little bit more of a natural process. Yeah. Another thing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, with natives, I know around here, you rarely see cremation.
Okay. Yeah, there's
because
reverence for the
yeah,
body. Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
that's the you just rarely see it. In fact, I don't know anybody who's been cremated. Just one person. I think that was it. But you just rarely see that. It's just because I don't know, like what we talked about. So.
Well, yeah, and another thing, I have never seen such colorful cemeteries.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah,
a couple of times I've gone home to visit,
uh,
I've spent time in the cemeteries. They are
yeah,
amazing. There's just so much respect and just gifts and, it's just colorful.
yeah.
It's just,
When I was a child, a lot of the natives, to honor their loved ones who have passed on, you would go to the cemeteries and people would have food on, or they'd have plates or bowls of fruit, baskets of fruit, or they'd have star quilts and blankets, and they would tell people, go over and grab this blanket or go over and grab that bowl of food or plate of food, and that was to honor them that way. It's just
yeah.
really a special time. It isn't just Memorial Day. It's totally honoring them. In their memory and stuff, and it
There's
was
a
just
lot of
yeah,
pictures too. A
yeah,
lot
a
of
lot of
pictures.
pictures,
Hmm.
and you'll see a lot of unique headstones, different
Hmm.
things like that,
Hmm.
and you'll see some the spiritual flags of the like from their sweat lodge or something. You see a lot of that. So.
Yeah.
And then, do you ever go drive through at night?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
lights. So
Yeah.
people leave
Yeah.
solar lights, and it's really cool, I think. So,
Yeah, it is. It is really unique. I've never seen that anywhere else. So, and another thing that I kind of forgot about, but I remember being, I think, at the wake the night before, and then looking over at some of Sheila's family members, and they had cut their hair. They had done so. What is the what is the significance with that?
that oh
It was
gosh.
little. It was the younger girls that had long hair, and now they had short hair. And
Yeah, in a way, you're sending, and it's probably placed in the coffin, right?
mhm.
Um, yeah, it's just you're sending part of you with them to help, part of your body, your spirit, to help them journey to the other side, and that they're not alone.
Yeah, and it seems kind of like a grief too, like you're
Yeah,
letting a part of
it's
your own.
it's a ritual of mourning. So
Mhm, mhm. And the hair grows back, so
yeah,
it'll come back, and a lot of, braids and things, especially for powwow dancing, so you need that long hair, but, yeah, that's another beautiful thing. I, became really good friends with, our Newman Center priest who went on to the Red Lake, in semi-retirement, the Red Lake community here, and, we were there to bury him, and we, we dug the dirt and did the whole thing. Like, there were no, we laid him to rest. We put
yeah,
the dirt on his body, and it took a long time, and had shovels, and there was something really beautiful about that too. Cause I just felt like we were tucking him in,
yeah,
tucking this dear man. He, just loved the people there, and they loved him. And, he had a nice spot in their cemetery. And, but that was a beautiful kind of a send off too. And there was some sage and things. It was Catholic funeral, but there was a melding of the two cultures there. And there was a star quilt on behind the altar, or on the altar. I can't remember. So I love that too. I just think it's so important that we honor everything. But you're kind of caught, Rich, in between these two worlds, and I kind of was too, growing up. Like, okay, this is what
yeah.
I know, and then there's this other world out here, and it doesn't always come together. How did you, as a boy of the reservation, was it hard to go out into the world, or how did you manage those two worlds in general, and then I kind of want to get back to the spiritual part of it, but just the world in general.
Yeah. When I was 18, I just couldn't wait to go to college. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
just, it's a small town, and you realize, I did a lot of reading, and so there was so much out there I wanted to learn, and I went to the University of Montana, Missoula, and to me that was a big city,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
because we're, growing up here, we're 4 or 5 hours from Billings.
It's very isolated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Minot's the closest kind of big town,
Williston.
Williston, yeah, but it's still not. a big city. And I went to University of Montana, and then as I went on through my career after graduation and stuff, I found that all my vacation time during work was spent going home to Montana. Every bit of it, and sometimes I would take unpaid leave to go home to Montana. I mean, after my brother was murdered, I took a lot of time to come home, but I just had to be home. And after that, but I found that all my vacation time was spent coming back to Montana, and that was always homesick. And a friend of mine said, "Well, what are you doing? Do you need to go home or go to Montana?" So from Washington, D.C., I moved back to Great Falls. I took a job with the Tribune, so I was closer to home. But then my mom got real sick, and so that's when I left my job there in Great Falls, and I came home and I helped. She didn't want to go into a nursing home, and I didn't want to see her go in one either. So I moved home to take care of her in her final years, and then I just ended up staying. So I was doing a lot of freelance work where I travel a lot, and I have not so much anymore. I mean, as you know, the journalism world is really,
drying up a bit.
Yeah, and so I still do. I still get offers to do some freelancing, but I don't have time right now. But I think when I retire in a few years, I am going to go back to freelance writing. So,
okay. When you were in Washington, were you thinking, or even Toronto, were you thinking someday you'd come home? I mean, was that kind of something in your heart? It sounds like you were being drawn. Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. So I just didn't like, I didn't grow up in a city, and it was just the constant waiting in line. The job was exciting. I enjoyed reporting on different things, and in Montana, I became like I don't know another word for it, but an expert at crime reporting and court reporting, and I couldn't get out of that. I would ask for jobs for feature writing because I wanted to do feature writing,
right?
And they wouldn't let me. They kept me covering crime in court, and I just hated it. It got depressing when you're sitting through your 10th trial of a child molester in court. That just really. But I remember, it was about the 10th or 11th trial and court hearing. I was sitting there and listening to what happened to this kid. And, I just couldn't take it anymore. So that's one of the reasons I moved, back to Toronto to work in features and entertainment. And I really miss that.
When I was out in Washington, one of the newspapers I worked at, I took the place of someone who had moved on from lifestyles to the courts and cops beat, and I thought, go for it. I'd rather do what you were doing. I don't know what drew her to that, but I don't think I could have taken that very much of that either. So
it's interesting, but you gotta. I remember going to a murder scene once, and the body had been in there about over a week. It was a guy who murdered his girlfriend, and it was August, 100 degrees, and you could smell the body when
oh boy.
And that just really, stuff like that, I didn't like at all. Covering huge car wrecks, or just court became a depressing place after a while. But I had won a lot of awards for court and crime reporting, and that's why they always made me stay there. So I just didn't like it. So,
Well, I have more questions for you, and I want to talk about the Hayoki. Is that how you say it?
Oh, Heyokas.
Heyoka. I couldn't remember. Yeah, Heyoka. So people will want to hear about this because it's very interesting, and I want to hear your perspective about it, as well as the devil hoofed guy that would show up places. So you want to hear about this, so don't leave. We're going to be right back here after a little bit of a break with Rich Peterson from Fort Peck Reservation in Poplar, Montana.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Well, welcome back to Matters of Soul Importance. We're having an interesting discussion with Richard Peterson. I call him Rich, and he has been in the world of communications, but he's also of the Dakota tribe, and he grew up in the same town that I did. Our families crossed paths a lot. My mom was his teacher and took him to Willy Wonka. So one of my favorite movies as well. But we're going to continue talking here about matters of soul importance, some of the things that affect our souls. And so I wanted to circle back to some of these strange phenomena of different spirits, I guess, or people spirits. I'm not sure, Rich, but tell me a little bit about the clown-like character that has been known to appear maybe at powwows or different things. We'll start there.
Yeah, it's called the Heoka, and they're actually it's a sacred practice they do. People think they're being funny, and they don't mean to be funny, but they're usually in a constant state of prayer. And what they do is for when they're dancing and things. That's for the people, for healing.
Okay.
And they're really, most people who are Heoka will not tell you they are. If they're real, they won't tell you. If they won't tell you, you wouldn't know. But because you have people out there bragging about it, but they're not the real ones, you know. So, and I want to preface all this by saying this is views from my tribe and, you know, my family, and other tribes are totally different. You know, other bands of Dakota Sioux are totally different. So this is just from my experience within my tribes, some of my tribe, and my family. So
yeah, and so like this definition I got on Wikipedia, just as a quick reference, is it says it's a sacred clown, part jester and satirist who speaks and moves and reacts in the opposite fashion to the people around them. Does that sound familiar? Not really to what you think of it as.
Somewhat. Like they'll shake your hand with their left hand. You know. Okay. Things are backward. They'll enter like may enter the sweat lodge backwards and stuff.
Interesting.
But it's something I don't talk about much because it's, to me, it's just really sacred. This world, you know, they devote themselves to a lot of traditional ways of the Creator. And so a lot of people don't understand that. They think they're just trying to be funny, where in fact they're not.
They're mysterious, though. We could say that at least, right?
Yeah.
I remember my friend Antoinette Shields. We went to piano lessons together out in the country, and her mom often would drive us out there. And she was telling me about it, and we were getting spooked out, you know, in the car talking about it and stuff.
When you're a little kid, people would say, you know, the Keokas are coming if you don't behave, and
right.
And that would scare any little kid.
That would go along. We were probably like in third grade or something like that. Yeah. Well, and then the other one, and it's so funny because I remember Sheila, who we started talking about in the beginning, Grable, loved telling about the Chelsea sightings of the
goat man,
or wherever. There's certain places that there'd be dances, and all of a sudden someone would be dancing, and they look down, and there's hoofed feet down there on the floor.
There's this infamous story there. I don't know if you remember. There was this bar between Poplar and Wolf Point called Jesse's Club.
Oh, that's
and there's a big famous story about how this guy walked into the bar and bought everybody a drink, and he got up, stood out, went to the jukebox machine, and he had hooves, and he said, "I bought you all a drink. Now I own all of you." And that story still sticks around, and people claim to have seen him like on the highway, or they've given a hitchhiker a ride and he had goat feet. I mean, there's all of that. I don't know. You know, I've never seen it. I have a relative who claims to have seen one. You know, and I believe her. I mean, she would never make that up, I don't think. And just it's kind of part of the lore around here, and so. But it's kind of freaky. I mean, I've met people who've seen a lot of other things. That whole area of Chelsea is really. I mean, they see a lot of UFOs there. There have been sightings of Bigfoot, you know, in the woods down by the river a lot, and so so there and that used to be the original where Sitting Bull lived after he surrendered when he came down from Canada. He stayed at Chelsea for a while.
Oh, okay.
And in that community's got some real history there. And there were survivors from a lot of the warriors from Little Bighorn battle were there, and some survivors of the Wounded Knee massacre settled there in Chelsea. And the first preacher at Chelsea was a survivor of the Wounded Knee massacre. So.
Okay. Wow. I didn't know all that.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you knew my great-grandfather, my mom's grandfather, wrote a book called Soldiers of the Plains, which detailed some of those Indian wars and dedicated it to the Indian dead. And I always knew about the book, but I didn't read it until I was, in my adult years. And it was like, wow, there's some really powerful stories in there. And it was kind of, apparently Custer's wife didn't like that it was being disseminated. So she put a stop to it. So that's what my great grandma used to say anyway. So I don't know, but so it didn't get as much widely publicized as it could have. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm tied to that as well. From I also had I think my great grandpa was they were trying to talk him into fighting in that war. And he couldn't. There was something that had happened, a tragedy at home, and I thought, well, I wouldn't be alive if that would have happened. So yeah. There's a very difficult history there. That when you were talking about healing, and we all need healing, but there's a great need for healing on the reservation.
There is. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you brought up the boarding schools, and I don't want to avoid that topic. I remember Caleb Shields, Antoinette's dad, who was a very prominent tribal member, met several presidents and was very, very much involved in politics for the tribe and things like that. He came to our 6th grade class. We had kind of it was called 7th elective. They couldn't figure out what to call it, and he talked about the boarding school issues and stuff. And it's something I came back to in college for an honors paper that I wrote, and it kind of dug into that. And it's a real difficult part of our history. So why don't you share a little bit? I mean, it's part of the story of the reservation. Share your connection with that.
Yeah, it's just, I learned a lot about, we always heard about the boarding schools, and then a lot of people just kept quiet about it because what they went through, there was a lot of sexual abuse, verbal, mental abuse, and torture, and a lot of the government and the church would send like teachers and priests here who were kind of the lower end of their they weren't the best people. So there was a lot they went through. I know my grandmother she was at the boarding school outside of town here. I mean, there's pictures of all the kids. They didn't have coats. They were given blankets, in the middle of winter, and a lot of them. I remember, not just here, but they were sent all over too. In Fort Peck, some of the bands of Dakota Sioux, they refused to sign treaties. So they were their children were the ones that were mostly punished, by sending them to boarding schools and not allowing their language, and they were just kind of beaten all the time. And, and that's, that kind of trauma that they call it, there's a term in Indian country called historical trauma, how that travels down to generation. And that's why a lot of people believe we have these problems, social problems, and it continues to this day. And there are groups out there that are working to bring healing to this, you have a lot of conferences, workshops, counselors that are now realizing this is a real thing, connected to in your DNA, the trauma, and so they're working to kind of counter that and kind of bring more healing to people. And so,
I heard a term that made sense to me too, intergenerational grieving.
Yeah.
And the person that told me about that had done some work on a reservation, but she said it's similar to what the Jews have gone through, also in World War II, and where you're kind of oppressed, suppressed, and yet your lifestyle is completely changed. You're broken apart, and it's sad. And kind of when I was doing that paper, I started really looking at everything from a different lens, and a lens of understanding why there's so many issues there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our culture all around us, the white man's culture, is pretty toxic also.
Yeah.
Especially, it seems like it's getting more and more. So, ultimately, we're all in need of healing and being set on a better path.
Yeah.
So there's different ways to do that on the reservation. I hope that there was some good in your Catholic upbringing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was through the church, I met, some of my best friends from high school, elementary, um, I still enjoy occasionally going to mass. I really do. There's a lot of people in the church. There's a lot of good people in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I really respect, I mean, some of the really good friends of my mom's were nuns. And despite what my mom went through, what my grandmother went through, they still, went to the church. My grandmother, she was a strong believer in the rosary. Every night at her bedside, she prayed the rosary. And she said it was the most powerful of prayers. And it's still really emotional for me to hear that, So,
Yeah.
And I thought, boy, when I go, that's what I want. I want a rosary.
Yeah. It's very simple, but it's, and Mary, I don't know where she fits into Native culture, obviously a Christian symbol, but she's a mom, and the Native culture is very maternal.
Yeah.
The woman is very revered. And so I would think that I can see how that would be a fit in something, that we look to our moms when we need help, right? They care for us. They fix our brokenness and our skin knees. And then you went and gave that back to your mom, which is so beautiful that you were able to help her die a dignified death. So, yeah. What do you wish, we talked about a little bit about a lot of different things. And I'm sure some people are curious and have even more questions because this is something that you're used to, but not a lot of people aren't. But what do you wish people knew, like the outer world? What do you wish they knew more about Native spirituality that you feel like maybe there's some misconceptions, or to be at that bridge in between those two worlds, which you have been through your work and through being in the wider world, but now you're back home offering your talents to the people there. What do you wish people knew about?
Boy, we're not all powwow dancers.
Yeah, exactly.
We all dance to the powwow. Most of us don't. I think just realize, natives are portrayed as kind of really stoic, and really quiet. But people don't realize most natives they're really prayerful people. Prayer is just really important. Yeah, maybe you don't go to church, because you kind of drifted away from the Catholic Church because of the boarding school era stuff that was coming out. So a lot of people have kind of drifted away, but you're still, they're really, we're all really prayerful people, and just we rely on prayer a lot. And,
one thing I thought of when you were talking about how your mom still would go to mass, even though there was those negative experiences. I think that's the same thing we're dealing with today. There's corruption in the church. And I think some of our younger generations are pushing away from that. But Jesus is still there. And it's hard to reconcile those two things. But I think what your mom was coming back to wasn't the corruption, because humanity is corrupt. But it was something good and true and beautiful that was at the center of that. And if you can look past that, somehow you can reconcile. I love that she was drawn to that good, true, and beautiful aspect of it. But that's hard. That is not easy for us to separate those things out. And I think a lot of younger people struggle with that,
That's what I always admired about her and my grandmother. Despite all they went through, they still looked past all that negative and just focused on God and, prayer and, things like that. And then through our cultural ways also. And so,
and then there is a great humility in the Native people that I experienced that aligns with the Christian faith. Jesus was a humble person who sought justice and was looking for what my old priest that I mentioned earlier, Father Bill, he called the Anawim, and that's the little people, the people that are not rich in material goods, perhaps. And there's a lot of poverty on the reservation, and given the situation, and it's hard to climb out of that. And so, but there's a tenderness there. Jesus seeks the hearts of the little people, and is closest to them, I think, in many ways. And I don't know, maybe that's one of the reasons that there's such a vibrant spirituality on the reservation. There's such a closeness and such a ready recognition that it's not just this material world here. Like there's this whole other world, and there seems to be a greater awareness, a more acute awareness of that world.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that informed my faith, also just some of that awareness that this is real. We don't see it all, but there is just a thin veil between these two worlds. And that was something that just was so apparent to me growing up on the reservation.
Yeah, you saw that probably at the funeral. That's how a lot of funerals are, So, I've been to funerals where it's just straight Native spiritual ways, or either straight Catholic ways or Presbyterian, and then there, like most I see, are a combination of both, weddings and funerals and baptisms. You see, like in the church, the Catholic Church, you'll see, they used to put the white cloth, the pall, is it, on the coffin, and some priests families wanted to, I remember in the 70s, 80s, families wanted to put star quilts on the coffins, and some priests wouldn't allow it. But in time, we had more priests who were very, very open to that, and burning sage and sweetgrass within the church, allowing a drum group to come in and sing a prayer song or the goodbye song. I mean, you're seeing more of that too,
the drums. I have to bring that up because there's just something about the drums. It it aligns with the heartbeat, and
you feel that, when you feel it, and it's when they sing that goodbye song and the thank you song, when you're thanking the Creator for this person's life and for giving this person to us for this amount of time, and you really feel that emotion in there, and it's just really connects with your heart and your spirit, So.
Yeah, you have to experience that. I think when I've gone into those places or gone home or just listened to the radio, the Native radio or whatever, I think my kids think I'm going into this other world. I just am transported back, and I want them to know that world. But obviously, we're away from that world. But I've tried to share it with them. And
in this country, there's so few of us that experience this.
Yeah. And it just right now, thinking about the drums and the singing, I just I feel a little bit teary eyed because I love it. Interesting. I had a friend here died of cancer at 39, and she did have some Native in her, and they did have a drum. She had drumming at her funeral, and I was one of her friends, her women friends were the pallbearers, but yeah, they had a drummer. And anyway, anything that can bring me close to that, there's so many beautiful, heartfelt traditions and sentiments. And even though there's this humility and this gentleness of the Native people and just their disposition in general, and obviously I'm talking in general, not everyone, there's also just the liveliness, right? And just the jokes and the humor and the
Indian women are the most funniest people I've ever met. They may look like serious stoic, but when they're joking and laughing, it's the most funniest thing to be around. It's just
it comes from the center. It comes from the belly. It's it just there's
but especially Native women, they're the most humorous people around.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, this has just been great. I feel like we could talk more, but I know you have work to do, so I don't want to steal away your day. But this is great. One more thing, I guess I want to bring up with our communication connection. I started listening to the ResNet radio station this year because the kids went to state, and it brought me back to the years that I got to go to state as a cheerleader 1 year, and we had a really good basketball team. So that was exciting to hear that, and to hear my old classmate Patty Joe's daughter being one of the announcers and everything. I bet that's pretty cool for you to see the communication on the reservation kind of bringing the world closer, right?
Yeah. It's Rescast Radio, and they do a great job doing the games, and they have a little Indian humor. And
I love it.
It's not your typical sports broadcast.
No, but it's great. It's its own thing,
and everybody knows each other, and so
there's inside jokes and things like that.
Native people too. I learned this through the Native American Journalism Association that I'm a member of, and Native people, they found that the social media that Native people use is primarily Facebook still. People, the younger generation think, I'm not on Facebook, but a lot of them are. So many Native older adults and young kids now, they're all on Facebook. And that's the primary way of Indian Natives communicating on social media. You don't see too many on Snapchat, TikTok. You see some, but primarily it's how people are communicating through Facebook. So.
That's so interesting. And, I was a letter writer. My mom, I don't know, she had a typewriter, and we loved playing on her old manual typewriter. And I love writing letters and having pen pals and things like that. But when I went away to college, I lost touch with my Native friends because that wasn't really the tradition. And really what brought us back was Facebook. And I'm so grateful for that because
Isn't that true?
I probably wouldn't be in touch with half the people that I am now. I'm sure some of us would have because we're forever connected. But Facebook has been a real blessing in terms of me being able to connect again with my family. And that's how you and I connected again.
Yeah.
So
in some ways it's like high school, but you kind of ignore that.
Yeah,
for natives,
that's okay.
That's how I keep up with all my friends from high school, college, at first I kind of poo-pooed Facebook, but now I honestly can't live without it. So,
I'm seeing more Native things like Native reels and different things come up. And I'm so grateful that they're able to tell their story more and more because I think for a long time those voices were hidden and they absolutely deserve to share their stories and share it in the language and the dialect that they use, and it's a joy for me to see that happening and to see them being able to tell their stories. Like we all have a story. We all do. Yeah. And those stories are important, Yeah. So I'm so grateful for the work you have done too. Your career has been amazing. And I'm sure the people there are proud of you, Rich. And I know you're going to continue to keep doing that, spreading the good news and bringing more people into the fold there. So thank you so much for your time today. This has been a joy. And I just really appreciate it.
It went by fast.
It did. We might have to do it again. So if you're willing, but thank you so much and take care and say hi to everyone in Poplar for me. Okay.
I will and tell your mom hi.
I will. Sounds good. Okay. God bless you. You take care, Rich.
You too. Bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye. What is faith like on Fort Peck? I loved reminiscing with Rich, my fellow reservation roving reporter. Can you tell I also like alliteration? His reflections brought me back to a very special and formative time in my life, reminding me how much of who I am today connects with that long ago little girl, and that my life of prayer and seeking God's will start there, in that isolated corner of the world, among a humble people who cherish life and family. I'm indebted to my hometown for the spiritual riches I brought from that experience, and I hope I'm able to honor others through those gifts. After our recorded discussion, Rich shared his regret for not having mentioned that despite some of the aspects of the church that have given him pause, he appreciates the church for what it does to uplift many on the reservation. And for that reason, he still supports the local parish financially and through donating homemade pies at the annual harvest dinner. An act of kindness he borrowed from his mom, Faye. And from what I hear, Rich learned well from his mother, sharing her aptitude for providing delicious and hearty dishes. Thinking about the distinct foods of the reservation, the warm fry bread and homemade soups and stews, it makes my mouth water even now. Well, I also realized a lost opportunity hearing Rich mention how Native women tend to have a naturally beautiful gift for humor. If you only could have heard Sheila Grable share stories. She had her comedic routine down to an art, and she drew many with her great storytelling. She was serious when she needed to be, but almost always, if you waited a few minutes, there'd be a joke to follow up. When I spent time at her home in Great Falls, Montana a year ago, all the laughs came back, along with some very serious discussions about death, which she knew was real and not far off. Sheila didn't want to leave her family, but she was excited to meet Jesus. And I will always be grateful to God for putting the fire in me to go visit her and save her life and laugh once more together as we shared sorrows and many joys. So Sheila, from your little Wasichu friend, thanks for always having my back and for the memories and for sharing your family with me too in those last days a year ago. You are forever missed and dearly loved. Well, in the next episode, we turn to politics, a topic that's growing in intensity as November hovers near. My guest will be Betty Grand to help answer the question, are religion and politics sworn enemies? Until then, don't lose sight of the light.